right, page 64. About the year 1250 BC, a distinction arose between the Achaean Danaans and other less civilized Achaeans from northwest Greece who invaded the Peloponnese, founded a new patriarchal dynasty, repudiated the sovereignty of the great goddess, and instituted the familiar Olympian pantheon ruled over by Zeus, in which gods and goddesses were equally represented. Myths of Zeus's quarrels with his wife Hera, a name of the great goddess, with his brother Poseidon, and with Apollo of Delphi suggest that the religious revolution was at first strongly resisted by the Danaans and Peloponnesians. But a united Greece captured Troy at the entrance of the Dardanelles, a city which had taken toll of their commerce with the Black Sea and the East. A generation after the fall of Troy, another Indo-European horde pressed down into Asia Minor and Europe, among them the Dorians who invaded Greece, killing, sacking, and burning, and a great tide of fugitives was let loose in all directions. Thus we may, without historical qualms, identify Danu of the Tuatha De Danann, who were Bronze Age I say Peloponnesians, but I don't know if that's what it is, but that's what I'll call it. Pelasgians, expelled from Greece in the middle of the second millennium with the pre-Achaean goddess Danae of Argos. Her power extended to Thessaly, and she mothered the early Achaean dynasty called the House of Perseus. More correctly, Tertius, the destroyer. But by Homer's time, Danae was masculinized into Danaus, son of Belus, who was said to have brought his daughters to Greece from Libya by way of Egypt, Syria, and Rhodes. The names of the three daughters, Linda, Chimeria, and Ialicia, are evidently titles of the goddess, who also figures as Lamia, daughter of Belus, a Libyan queen. In the well-known legend of the massacre of the sons of Aegyptus, on their wedding night, the number of these daughters of Danaus or Danaids is enlarged from 3 to 50, probably because that was the regular number of priestesses in the Argive and Alaean colleges of the mother goddess cult. The original Danaids may well may have come up from the Aegean from Lake Tritonis in Libya, now a salt marsh, by the route given in the legend, though it is unlikely that they were so called until they reached Syria, that the Cottians, who came from northern Greece from the Black Sea by way of Phrygia and Thrace, were also reckoned as Danaans, proves that they arrived there before the Aeolians, who were not so reckoned. A.B. Cook, in his Zeus, gives strong reasons for believing that the Greco-Libyans and the Thraco-Phrygians were related, and that both tribal groups had relatives among the early Cretans. We may further identify Danu with the mother goddess of the Aegean Danuna, a people who about the year 1200 BC, according to contemporary Egyptian inscriptions, invaded northern Syria in company with the Sherdina and Zakla of Lydia, the Shakalasha of Phrygia in the Pulasati of Lycia, the Akwaiwasha of Pamphylia, and the other Eastern Mediterranean peoples. To the Egyptians, these were all peoples of the sea. The Akaiwasha are Achaeans, forced by the pressure of the new Indo-European horde to immigrate from the coastal parts of Asia Minor as well as from Greece and the Aegean Islands. The Pulasati became the Philistines of southern Phoenicia. They were mixed with Cherethites, Cretans, some of whom served in King David's bodyguard at Jerusalem. Possibly Greek-speaking Cretans, Sir Arthur Evans suggests. One immigrant people, the conquerors of the Hittites, known as the Assyrians as the Muski, and to the Greeks as the Moschians, established themselves on the upper Euphrates of Hierapolis. Lucian's account in his De Syria of the antique rites still practiced in the 2nd century AD at their temple of the Greek goddess gives the clearest picture of the Aegean Bronze Age religion that has been preserved. Tribes or clans of this same confederacy drifted westward to Sicily, Italy, North Africa, Spain. The Zacala became the Cecils of Sicily. The Shardina gave their name to Sardinia. The Tertia are the Terzians or Tyrians of Etruria. Some Danaans seem to have traveled west, since Silius Italicus, a 1st century Latin poet said to have been a Spaniard, records a tradition that the Balearic Islands, a center of megalithic culture and one of the chief sources of tin in the ancient world, were first made into a kingdom by the Danaans. Teptolepmus and Lindus. Lindus is a masculinization of the Danan Linda. At least one part of the people remained in Asia Minor. Recently, a Danan city has been discovered in the foothills of Taurus Mountains near Alexandretta, and the inscriptions, not yet deciphered, are in Hittite hieroglyphs of the 9th century BC and in Aramaic script. The language is thought to be Canaanitish, and the scriptures are a mixture of Assyrio-Hittite, Egyptian, and Aegean styles, which bears out the Greek account of Danaus as a son of Agnor, Canaan, who came up north from Libya by way of Egypt and Syria. The myth of the emasculation of Uranus by his son Cronus and the vigilance subsequently taken on Cronus by his son Zeus, who banished him to the western underworld under charge of the 100-handed ones, is not an easy one to disentangle. In its original sense, it records the annual supplanting of the old oak king by his successor. Zeus was at one time the name of a herdsman's oracular hero connected with the oak tree cult of Dodona in Epirus, which was presided over by the dove priestesses of Dione, a woodland great goddess otherwise known as Dana or Diana. The theory of Fraser's golden bow is familiar enough to make this point unnecessary to elaborate at length, though Fraser does not clearly explain the cutting of the mistletoe from the oak by the Druids typified the emasculation of the old king by his successor, the mistletoe being a prime phallic emblem. The king himself was eucharistically eaten after castration, as several legends of the Pelopian dynasty testify, but in the Peloponnese, at least this oak tree cult had been superimposed on a barley cult, of which Cronus was the hero and in which human sacrifice was also the rule. In the barley cult, as in the oak cult, the successor to the kingship inherited the favors of the priestesses of his goddess mother. In both cults, the victim became an immortal, and his oracular remains were removed for burial to some sacred island, such as Samothrace, Lemnos, Pharos near Alexandria, Ortega, the islet near Delos, the other Ortega off Sicily, Luce off the mouth of the Danube, where Achilles had a shrine, Circe's Aeaea, I can't say that word, Aeaea, now Lucin in the Adriatic, the Atlantic Elysium where Menelaus went after death, and the distant Ogygia, perhaps Tory Island, off the west coast of Ireland, under the charge of magic-making and orgiastic priestesses. That Cronus, the emasculator, was disposed by his son Zeus is an economical statement. The Achaean herdsmen who, on their arrival in northern Greece, had identified their sky god with the local oak hero, gained ascendancy over the Peloponnesian agriculturists. But there was a compromise between the two cults. Dione and Diana of the woodland was identified with Danae of the barley, and that an inconvenient golden sickle, not a billhook or of flint or obsidian was later used by the Gallic Druids for lopping the mistletoe, proves that the oak ritual had been combined with that of the barley king, whom the goddess Danae or Alphito or Demeter or Ceres reaped with her moon-shaped sickle. Reaping meant castration. Similarly, the Gala warriors of Abyssinia carry a miniature sickle into battle for castrating their enemies. The Latin Cronus was called Saturn, and in his statues he was armed with a pruning knife crooked like a crow's bill, probably a rebus on his name. For though the later Greeks liked to think that the name meant Cronus, time, because any very old man was humorously called Cronus, the more likely derivation is from the same root, cron, or corn, that gives the Greek and Latin words for crow, corne or cornix. The crow was a bird much consulted by augurs and symbolic in Italy as in Greece of long life. Thus it is possible that another name for Cronus, the sleeping titan guarded by the 100-headed Briareus, was Bran, the crow god. The Cronus myth, at any rate, is ambivalent. It records the supersession and ritual murder in both oak and barley cults of the sacred king at the close of his term of office, and it records the conquest by the Achaean herdsmen of the pre-Achaean husbandmen of Greece. At the Roman Saturnalia in Republican times, a festival corresponding with the Old English Yule, all social restraints were temporarily abandoned in memory of the golden reign of Cronus. I call Bran a crow god, but crow, raven, scald crow, and other large black carrion birds are not always differentiated in early times. Coron, in Greek also included the corax or raven, and the Latin corvus, raven, comes from the same root as cornix, crow. The crows of Bran, Cronus, Saturn, Asclepius, and Apollo are equally ravens. The 50 Danaids appear in the early British history. John Milton, in his Early Britain, scoffs ponderously at the legend preserved by Nennius that Britain derives its earliest name, Albion, by which it is known to Pliny from Albania, the white goddess, the eldest of the Danaans. The name Albina, a form of which was also given to the river Elbe, Albus in Latin, and which accounts for the Germanic words elven, and elf woman, alb, elf, and, aptdrucken. The nightmare of incubus is connected with the Greek words alphos, meaning dull white leprosy. Latin, albus, alphitian, pearl barley, and Alphito, the white goddess who in classical times had degenerated into a nursery bugbear, but who seems originally to have been the Danaan barley goddess of Argos. Sir James Fraser regards her as either Demeter or her double Persephone. The word Argos itself means shimmering white and is the conventional adjective to describe white priestly vestments. It also means quick as a flash. That we are justified in connecting the 100-armed men with the white goddess of Argos is proved by the myth of Io, the same goddess, nurse to the infant Dionysus, who was regarded by Argus Panoptes. Panoptes, I can't say that word, all eyes. The 100-eyed monster, probably represented as a white dog. Argo was the name of Odysseus's famous dog. Io was the white cow aspect of the goddess as barley goddess. She was also worshipped as a white mare, Leucippe, and as a white sow, Cor, or Forus. I can't say these words. Phorcys, whose more polite title was Marpessa, the Snatcher. How long have we been going? 14 minutes, man. This book in particular is crazy. I only want to read a little bit of it at a time.